the 7th of May, 2022. It's Saturday. Hi! Make sure to go to my website, www.susanmealing.com. Additionally, make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel and like my official YouTube video. And if you're going to leave a comment, please do make sure to have etiquette and respect as much as possible. So, I was listening to the singer, performer, artist of the first CD I ever purchased on YouTube, and that would be Kid Rock. I had purchased his CD, the cowboy one, back in Illinois when I got my first Walkman. Yeah, I would blare that CD, in that 86 Dodge Grand Caravan beige with wood paneling. Yes, I did. I was, yeah. I had to get those who know, I had to get the cassette converter for the Walkman to work, and put the CD player in the passenger seat because those who knew about the skipping situation. Yeah. And then I learned how to get the sound louder and stuff like that. Yeah. You want to talk about New Jersey sort of stuff, like Camden area? Old school sorts of stuff. Yes. There were people at Crystal Lake South who didn't understand, and it's like, yeah, because you have no idea. And not in any offense to ICP or Insane Clown Posse. I did enjoy some of their music, but I really liked Kid Rock. I did. I just, his sound, it's kind of similar to Eminem, or technically it's Eminem, but one of those, yeah, the lyrics in the combination of stuff with Dre, and I grew up with certain things, so it's like my first CD was Kid Rock, and so completely did. I can even make a joke, because I had gone scuba diving and I had found a rock and petrified brain coral, and in comparison to everybody else that I was on that scuba dive trip, I was the youngest biologically. Though also in reference to the time frame of scuba diving, I actually was in comparison. So some of those guys were scuba diving for well over 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 years, and there I am in a whopping whole 5 or 6 months. Granted, I had completed as many scuba diving certifications as I had earned, but that's, that is as it is. So, and since it was a baby size, Kid Rock, and so I was listening to that, and the We the People song, which is kind of irony for any hypotheticals regarding the metaphor of my biological sister Paddy, for short, or Patricia Ann Hom-Miller, as to Fauci, because of rhyming and stuff like that. So Paddy or Fauci, and those particular references, or however you want to put that in regards of similar sounding words of Paddy, and so my biological sister in childhood, she went by Paddy, but she got older, or whenever she got in trouble, Patricia Ann Hom, sort of thing, and it was as it was, or Patricia Ann Hom-Miller, whatever. And so, it's kind of irony when thinking about that. Today, the 7th of May, 2022. So, in this song, it has the Let's Go Brandon situation. And if you've been paying attention to certain news outlets, or at the very minimum, certain commentary, so I've been listening more recently to the combination of the Joe Rogan Experience on YouTube, through his official YouTube channel, and then through Fox News. Some here and there regarding, not nearly as much admittedly through CNN or MSNBC as I had before, though, Greg Gutfeld and Tucker Carlson, I know, I have a thing as far as Sean Hannity is concerned. It's kind of funny, actually, when it comes to Sean Hannity, because way back when, in the year of which isn't really that far back, it was 2013, I was in Washington State, and this elderly female, she had put signs up in regards to a cat she was And it's like, have you heard of this Sean Hannity? And it's like, yes. Wow, I feel like I'm back in New Jersey. Wow, instantly. Yes, I've heard of Sean Hannity. Yes, he's such a handsome young man. Oh. Yes, ma'am. You come inside, you sit down with me, and you listen to this Sean Hannity. He's so into, he would love you. This is and she was a very sweet woman, and she really truthfully was. It was funny as far as, because it just really was. It was a situation. So, she went on, oh, Sean Hannity, he would look at you and he would fall in love with you. And it was just one of those, wow, you very much remind me of New Jersey. And I was already having issues as far as the after effects of my head injury from Palm Sunday in 2000. With the background as far as the different, plants and stuff like that, instantaneously. With the way, and those who know how certain Yentas and Yetis are, it was that way. It was like I was back in Asher Holmes Elementary School. Do you know my schmoly? That sort of stuff for those who know. Yes, you look like a good little Jewish girl, sort of stuff. I grew up with this. There are those who know. So, so I was listening and stuff like that, and watching in some references as the different clips and all that sort of a different type of clip. Though yes, I am for the Second Amendment. 2/3 of a pun, it's okay. I can, there was this guy I knew, he had asked me when I had said something, everybody has issues. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, like magazines. And he was like, what? And I was like, everybody has issues like magazines. And he goes, you mean like clips for, I'm Second Amendment friendly. I was talking about issues like magazine subscriptions. Wow, that one here. And we were in a USPS station at the time. And it's like, I don't know why this feels like this weird sensation. I don't know. There's something about being in this location at this moment with you saying those particular words. I am a fan of the Second Amendment. I don't know why. However, it seems a little bit odd that that's where you went with that, Ken Westmeyer. Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, that's fine. The irony, though, for those who know about the garage situation in the year 2006, Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kirkendall Jr., he said something about some movie. It's a Jim Henson movie. And he said that Ken Westmeyer looked like one of the Chamberlain guy or something like that. I don't know. It's some dark crystal or something like that. I wouldn't officially know. I remember, what were they called? The Muppets. I remember those. So I don't remember the dark crystal, whatever, though I'm going to guess to make there are some who would know that particular reference. Anyway, in these regards of quite a few different situations, I have discussed when it came to, as well as wrote about, the situations in reference to my scuba diving in the year of 2009. And so I went out to the Atlantic area after having earned 25 of 26 scuba diving certifications, found a few forming underwater, forming volcanoes, took a few pictures here and there, and then a little bit later took my son, my daughter, and my niece to the Florida Keys in regards of the dolphin excursion, and then afterwards, while they were sleeping, I went and had gone to the Vandenberg, literally, and a little bit further beyond. Just the abyss and stuff like that in the trenches, and it was as it was. And then I surfaced, and at some point in time, I get this frantic phone call from my ex-sister-in-law, Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen. And she's freaking out, and it's like, why are you freaking out? And it was almost like it was a guilty conscience as to how much she felt that she had to get me to take my son, my daughter, and my niece to great-grandma Nichols' house. And it's one of those, why are you freaking out? What's wrong with you? And so it was almost like she had a guilty conscience as far as the situations where the hypothetical of them not paying attention to Grandpa Nichols as far as all those warnings, and I've already gone over the dress blues situation as far as that was concerned, and several official YouTube videos of mine previously, several journal blog entries on the ornery PSA on my website, www.susanneeling.com. I've also had discussions in person, face-to-face in person, with people throughout the state of Texas since the year of 2008 about those dress blues, as well, technically it was 2006, as far as the first time seeing those dress blues in that particular capacity, and the fact that I didn't graduate basic training. Well, I wouldn't know what the different medals and ribbons were. And so that situation with the fairy and dragon piece, as well as the necklace from Atlantis Discovered and that whole thing, and how it got pieced back together, yes, but there were certain problems in regards of, so I've gone over that as far as volunteering at 9 Lives Books and a few other situations, and the culmination of, however, having gotten to Steele, Alabama at the end of the time frame in Boca, Florida, as far as that was concerned. Then it was out to Steele, Alabama, instead of where I could have done that when spending time in Macon, Georgia, as far as my ex-sister-in-law, Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen, and her daughters, Sandra Marie Osteen and Ariel Nicole Osteen, and David Osteen, regarding Warner Robins Air Force Base, and those particular situations, because they wouldn't legally have any authority to do anything with any theater productions, of course, because of legalities. So while they might not have known certain things, as far as Warner Brothers, in that hypothetical, legally they didn't have any authority, because while I didn't graduate basic training, I'm still the sponsor. Yeah, that's always been how that's been. Additionally, just for clarifications, over the decades, I've learned how to change my handwriting because of certain factors that I learned about years ago when I was a child in New Jersey. So I do certain things to make sure as best as I can, so that way there's always that capability to ensure the actual security because of a few things. I put that in action as soon as I was invited to Marine and Science Technology School with the Navy attachment, because I didn't know what the possibilities were that could be in those particular references, because depending on the MOS or what have you, as far as that's concerned. I also have brought up more recently, since 2019, updating points, but really in 2020, as to the paperwork aspects regarding my Army paperwork and those references. And so that is as it is. Though I've done what I could, there's plenty of letters that I sent out and those particular references to ensure the safety and security of my work. So in 2019, if I remember correctly, maybe 2018, I had signed a piece of paper as a little whatever, and I changed my handwriting that point in time because of making sure that I didn't have certain needless problems because of certain factors and situations. So I wanted to prevent fraud, and if there was any issues of that, then I would be capable to assist law enforcement to take care of that, so that way those hypotheticals, if there were any because of what occurred during my Medal of Honor art project trips, would have that capacity of ensuring the safety and security of my work. And business stuff. So that's another factor. Even though whatever hypotheticals in Iowa 2018, I wanted to make sure I didn't have any of those needless problems. So because of 2009 regarding my scuba diving in the Florida Keys, landing at the bottom of the ocean, all those particular factors and situations of having been at Steele, Alabama, and spending time with great Uncle Tony, who had been a Marine and had met him once before, and those particular situations where he kind of freaked out. And then there was great grandma Nichols, and she kind of freaked out in certain references. Well, there was also a second cousin to Sandra Marie Osteen and Ariel Nicole Osteen, house at that time, named Brandon. He had a room off of, so there was, you walked in to the location, it's kind of the living room. Behind the living room wall was the kitchen. Off to the left was like a garage slash where Great Uncle Tony was. Off to the right was Great Grandma Nichols' house, and then room, and then Brandon's room was straight down the miniature hallway area with the bathroom area nearby. And so he had two or three, I think he had 2 bunk beds in that particular room, and a computer desk. And so there were certain things, and Great Grandma Nichols had said that he was staying at her house because of certain behavioral issues regarding the school and the school system, and I've made some suggestions because usually individuals that are smarter than what the school system is teaching, the school system will try to slow them down in comparison to actually doing what they need for the child for certain types of locations. And he had listened to that when I was discussing with Great Grandma Nichols, and I had explained that there are ways for different educational portions, you just have to pay attention to make sure you're getting valid information because you want to learn properly. And so, and this is of course before certain problems regarding my own daughter, because Carrollton, Texas, in the year 2009, I physically look as I do, and other people's opinions as far as those particular locations, and I earned 26 scuba diving certifications, where the normalcy in a 10-month period is 5 specialties and the open water and advanced open water. And then that's about but it usually takes about 2 years for most people to do those 5 specialties with the open water, advanced open water, and then CPR, first aid, AED situations. That usually takes people 2 years. I earned 26 scuba diving certifications. From March to November is the official certification date, though it technically should be the same date as the time frame regarding the individuals, as far as the 2 males, 2 or 3 males, if I remember correctly. I think it's 2 males that had actually been at the cavern scuba diving certification with Allie and Richard Thomas, and that cavern excursion situation. That's when it should actually be for my cavern certification date. However, even apparently in what is supposed to be biological adult aspects, that sort of needless slowing down of things, because those types of individuals that are more accustomed to the lazy scuba diving sport, civilian, recreational type of scuba diving compared to my work as to what I needed to take care of, I had already dealt with that in San Antonio. Regarding the civilian sector in San Antonio, it actually had to be explained to me by former military guys that while most military guys have the understanding from the knowledge as to the, fast-paced, let's go, we got stuff to do, we got to go here, we got to do this, we got to move here, got to do this, take care of that, move that over here, so on and so forth. Civilians in the state of Texas tended to move on Texas Standard Time in comparison to military standard time, which translates to if you're early, you're on time, if you're on time, you're late, if you're late, as far as timing, you're in trouble. And so early is always best, and as a biological female, I very much understand that, because by technicalities, being early is always great, despite certain clothing issues. Being on time, well, it's better to be on time, in that regard. And then being late, well, as a biological female, if late, well, then that definitely means that there was something going on now. So, and, being as I am, I'd rather be early or on time. I don't want to be OBGYN guys. Where, they tried to claim, well, what if you get in a relationship with a male and there's surrogacy, there's, adoption, there's this, there's that, there's plenty of other capacities. Or he can have his own, it depends on the year, and, if he needs whatever as assistance, that's fine, but if he loves me, he's not going to, it's not just if he loves me, he wouldn't want me to go through that, he'd have to love himself. And the doctors were like, why? In multiple appointments, and I was like, look at my medical records, look at how long I was in labor. And so, how much of a masochist would you actually have to be to want to be in a hospital for over 7 days where the female is in labor for over 7 days? And you're not allowed to leave except for you can go to the bathroom, get something to eat, and be back right there. You'd have to be a huge masochist to be like, yeah, let's totally, no. I said, I'm gonna joke, and I'll have the Meghan Trainor song as far as I said no, and no, and no, and no, because I had my two, I'm done. That's what I got to say on that. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. However, in that particular reference, going back to 2009 compared to now in 2022, discussing stuff from 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, and so on and so forth, the situations regarding explaining to great-grandma Nichols that a lot of times, unfortunately, when it comes to certain types of school systems, if they don't have the educational information that will actually assist a child that has an advanced intelligence, the school system tries to stupefy them. And so in this Kid Rock song, he was talking about these mental health issues. Well, yeah, it's because of certain needless problems in certain references, not just, it's a combined factor, but in this particular reference of 2009, yeah, when you try to slow down someone who is far more advanced or far more capable, you cause needless problems because of whatever wishful thinking you have. And in order to actually progress, children that have a higher capability and or higher intellectual capability do not need to be slowed down. What they need is the actual educational material that will assist them to progress forward. Because they're not just progressing forward in reference to themselves, they tend to have a higher connection point in regards to more individuals and wanting to genuinely assist life to progress forward. And so I had been taken on a tour of the house, and I had made a reference to, well, your grandson has the computer in his room, and he had shown me the black light, and I could tell he's a teenager. And the response from great-grandma Nichols was, well, what do you mean about them big city talk? And it's like, how do I explain? So your grandson is a teenager, and he has a computer in his room. You might want to think about certain things as far as what he's looking at, because there's certain things in those particular references. And so he had shown me the UV black light where he, turned it on, and it lit the whole room up like, there was tinsel everywhere. And, teenage males tend to be more infamous for this particular situation, and they tend to have some ways of looking at certain, and I was doing as best as I could, because still I particular reference, so it doesn't matter in those regards, which is an irony in several situations. So there's a movie as an irony. So I particularly like documentaries more so than fiction-based movies. And so there was a movie, I cannot remember what it was called, but there was this guy, and it's an irony regarding a scuba diver. And he was in the Navy, and this was after the Pearl Harbor movie, which I, some romance or whatever in that regard. But this guy, he had been a Navy something or another. I think he might have been a Navy SEAL. I think so. And he was African American. And all of these individuals tried to claim that he wasn't strong enough. So he had to actually, in court, prove that he was capable to actually handle it, which I guess is an irony now in 2022, because in December of 2020, I went out to Kitty Hawk. I went swimming. And it's like, yeah, so here's the colder-ish areas, here's my strength as far as, so I found where rip current was. For those who know what a rip current is, it's where two areas come together, and the strength of the ocean, it literally rips you from the shoreline. And so as a wave was coming in, I actually, if you go to my Facebook account, you can go to my website, www.susanneeling.com, you have to have strength to be capable to do my scuba diving, especially when it comes to the Vandenberg work. And not just the Vandenberg, it includes in the Gulf of Mexico area because of some of the stuff that was going on that I had to take care of. And so you have that as far as that particular rip current, as well as the time frame of December in 2020. And then those who understand astrological formations, how those energetic impacts, the most common known one is in reference to full moons and new moons. There are certain situations, so hospitals, law enforcement, and fire department are the main ones who know if they take a look at their statistics for each month and take a look at the full moon and the new moon, usually about 3 days before and 3 days after, so about a 7-day period, they can see that large difference as far as certain situations. So it obviously also impacts the water areas, such as the ocean. And so NOAA and other types of oceanic studies would know certain factors as far as not just the temperature aspects, possibly the strength. Those usually would be in reference to the Coast Guard, the Marine Corps, and the Navy that goes out on the water, and they'd be capable to go over those particular references. And so in December 2020, I went directly to where there was a rip current and the strength of, so that way, I mean, I had earned my first scuba diving certification in March of 2009 on the 1st. Well, my first scuba dives weren't in March. My first scuba dives in the actual water were in February. So, despite it being Texas, and sure, it's the claim of hot springs, it doesn't change the fact it was around 60 degrees, and being submerged then for those who know the movie, then there's like the other ex-sisters-in-laws and stuff like that, and you kind of can see the physical aspects when you add my biological sister in there. As far as the, annoying mer people, as far as the Disney movie in comparison to real life. And so in regards of then in 2021 and 2022, having proven that, as far as the oceanic waters, not just the strength, not just the temperature, because of the facts of how I was raised in comparison to my biological sister. So, I've taken precautionary measures for myself, for my business, for my safety, for my stuff, because of knowing those types of, in the East Coast area, if you went around certain boroughs, those types would be called trifling. If you understand that language. So my biological mother and biological sister would be a trifling aspect. My ex-sisters-in-law, my ex-mother-in-law would be trifling. And, certain aspects of the children involved, now they're biologically trifling. And those who understand that particular aspect, there are those who would be capable to verify and clarify if they fit those particular references of trifling. And there are a few other words, but, for this lecture, I'll just leave it at that. And so, so I've done a few things to make sure to protect myself. Oh, there's also the modern day book, and you can find that in the book section of my website, www.susanmealing.com. In conjunction to the updates to my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmealing.com, for those particular references regarding such hypotheticals. For example, Olympia, Washington, as far as the Quality Inn. Those individuals I wouldn't consider as quality. However, that might be, depends on your opinion of what you consider as quality. Personal opinion. So there is that in that hypothetical, if the modern day book that I authored would be accurate in those references. So in the conjunction action of the irony of the name Fauci and my biological sister Paddy for short, and or certain other factors regarding those types, well, again, the proof of my particular background as to the difference, because if I was actually raised the same way my biological sister was raised, each and every person who has ever known me would know the difference if they had seen how my biological sister has been treated in comparison. So where my biological mother, biological father have introduced my biological sister to people, they have not done that with me. I mean, all you have to do is take in consideration the abomination of a wedding regarding my biological sister to Zach Miller in the Austin area that I wrote about after discussing with several people in regards of finding a silver lining. Again, you can go to my book section. In regards of my website, www.susanmealing.com. So that's a very good example. You could also utilize the example of in the year of 2012, when at Mike and Anna's house and a female from the Red Hat Society had walked up and had been as she had been, and she had acknowledged she had only known about my biological sister Patricia in comparison. But there's also the San Antonio pagan community for another reference as to that sort of stuff. So if I actually was treated the same way as my biological sister, then I would have actually been treated the same way. However, since I wasn't, because of the reality, those are the facts. They treated my children's biological father, my dead ex-husband, more similar to my biological sister in comparison to me. Because they thought that it's similar. My biological mother thought that having the scheduled C-section for my biological sister would appease my bakong and my bakpu because it was on my bakong's birthday, while ignoring my bakpu who had given the name. What she did not understand was the honor and reverence was intended for my buck poo because of certain backgrounds in reference to that particular relationship in comparison to what my biological mother thought. You know, being a Caucasian mixture, thinking that she actually knew something because she read a book, in comparison to the actualities of. So in the similar aspect, where I'm the one and only sponsor, my biological mother repeated history and failed to ever pay attention to the fact that my children's biological father, my dead ex-husband, was not ever a sponsor. He graduated basic training or whatever as far as that's concerned. He, however, did the dress blues situation in comparison, stealing valor as far as the Vietnam War ribbon and a few other factors, whereas I had always been the sponsor. The VA house loan in reference to my house in San Antonio. That was all me. They didn't ever have any legal authority in any capacity in reference to my son, my daughter, or myself, ever. And so a secondary time frame where my biological mother repeated the same aspects as to her failure when it came to the respect regarding my bakong and my bakpo. Because my bakong knew who was who. Sure, my bakpo was half Cantonese and half Mandarin. My bakong was only pure Cantonese. However, unlike what some people might think, the half Mandarin and half Cantonese at the time frame, they were the most hated in certain references because they were the most rare and most valuable. So Mandarins had an issue with half Mandarin and half Cantonese because of the other portion, whereas Cantonese had issues with the half Mandarin, half Cantonese because of that. There was a certain level of jealousy to a certain degree, but there was also a certain amount of reverence and honor because of that rarity. So where my biological mother failed to ever see that, that was repeated. Because, you know, it just is the facts as far as that's concerned. So sure, I didn't graduate basic training or go to AIT. However, I had also been invited to attend Marine and Science Technology School with the Navy attachment. My background was obviously already known for me to be invited to attend the test portion and all that. Additionally, that same year was when I had earned my way to the International Taekwondo competition, where I earned second and third place in sparring and form. On top of that year, additionally, where I'd earned the capability to meet Governor Christine Todd Whitman. So my biological mother put all of her proverbial eggs into one basket, called my biological sister, Patricia Ann Hom-Miller, and just as similarly with my bakong and my bakpo, because my bakong was infuriated with Anna. And because partially he had insulted my bakpo. And on top of that, because she failed to pay attention to anything at all, and then Mike tried to defend her for her choices, he knows what he dealt with because of his insult to my bakong and my bakpo. And so that was as it was. And so hypothetically, as to the irony of Paddy or Patricia Ann Hom-Miller regarding Dr. Fauci as to such hypotheticals regarding her and her college aspects, legally, they did not ever have that authority at all whatsoever at any point in time. And so, but the proof would be as to how the proof would be, and if they ever showed those dress blue pictures to anybody and or took pictures with my dead ex-husband in those dress blue pictures, that's how much he hated them. He was as he was, and different arguments and fights. I already had written about this in Finding a Silver Lining because I would not stand up for him during Halloween in 2007 in the neighborhood of my house. So that's just one of multiple situations. That was in front of Arnold, well, I should say Emily, but Arnold's and Emily's two children had seen that, as far as him being yelled at for those dress blues. So my biological mother, biological father, and biological sister choosing that instead, their failure to pay attention to the details. Additionally, to the fact that the phone call from my biological mother when I was in medical hold unit and those factors, they legally had no authority, ever, when it comes to me. Or my son or my daughter. They have not ever had that legal authority. Officially. They have not ever been allowed to make those deals. And in reference to my ex-in-laws, who failed to pay attention to that, because not only was Grandpa Nichols telling about that, even my dead ex-husband, their dead relative, went to Fort Worth from the first weekend after Halloween, and each and every weekend after, as I have explained and proven, my dead ex-husband, my children's biological father, told Grandma Nichols what he was dealing with. Grandpa Nichols said, "Told you so." So there's the additional factor of Susie officially having been told as well, and she didn't see anything wrong with that at all, because what was the big deal? Grandpa Nichols had made attempts to repeatedly explain to those people for months. So here's a few areas that I personally know of, whether I personally had seen and or been told that my dead ex-husband, when he was alive, had worn those dress blues walking around. Okay? So there's Fort Sam Houston Medical Hold Unit area, meaning the Warrior Transition Unit area, the Brooke Army Medical Center parking lot, as well as Brooke Army Medical Center itself. Fort Sam Houston regarding the overall areas in conjunction to the Ingram Park Mall, because JCPenney's for the pictures, and around the parking lot of Ingram Park Mall. Then there's also Dr. Sun's lab at UTSCHSA, or whatever the letters of are, the parking lot, the building. By the way, the VA hospital is not far from that. Then there's also UTSA as well. Then there is, which has a ROTC program, by the way. Then there is Nine Lives Bookstore at its original location, in conjunction to the parking lot area, that Walmart, as well as the IHOP on 410 and Bandera. Sitting down and eating in that particular location with those dress blues on, in conjunction to my biological mother, biological father, and biological sister's house, as far as that's concerned, and wherever those people went, additionally, to the neighborhood of gas station on the corner as well. So those are just a few locations in the city of San Antonio that he did that in, on top of Halloween in regards to Pheasant Creek subdivision as well as Apple Creek subdivision in San Antonio. In those dress blues of the stolen dollar with the Vietnam ribbon, as well as the heart situation. So just think, for the reference that I've given as far as uniform fetish ball in the year 2009. So I don't know what those ribbons are as far as the dress blues are concerned. However, I know rank. I know the patterns as far as certain at that time and the head cover situations. And I popped off on graduate basic training. So, again, my children's biological father, my dead ex-husband, knowingly wore dress blues with Grandpa Nichols's earned ribbons on those dress blues, one of them being the Vietnam ribbon. So then there's McCoy Elementary School board meeting, which Philip Olmsted would know that one of the individuals as to that board meeting, the vice superintendent, had brought up he had been in the Vietnam War. That meant nothing to me other than thank you for your service. However, I did not graduate basic training. Should probably pay attention to that part. It's common sense. It's not difficult to figure out. And so in that reference of I did not graduate basic training, how difficult is it for people to understand that I did not graduate basic training? What level of lack of intelligence do you have to have at that point at that school, on top of everything else that was going on? So what lack of intelligence would there be in the Carrollton, Texas city area? I mean, I dealt with a bunch of people telling me that they knew I didn't graduate basic training. So for that particular individual to bring up the Vietnam War in that time frame of 2010 after the Fort Worth Zoo, what level of lack of intelligence do you have to pay attention to the fact that I didn't graduate basic training? Or are you so arrogant and ignorant to think that even though I did not graduate basic training, I just had to be taught how to count to 10. I only had to be retaught the names of colors and retaught rank. Would you be that ignorant to think that I would know ribbons? Because, you know, there's those memory deficits and cognitive disorders. That would let you know your bigotry as far as that school district, and that city as I had brought forward before. Because it's not rocket science. For as many people who have complained about me going on about how I didn't graduate basic training, you would think those people would be capable to put 1 plus 1 together as 2. As far as that's concerned. Just pointing that out there. It's not rocket science. So, and again, second and final separation before he went around doing that. So, while I was dealing with what I was dealing with, on top of those people knowing, male and female, knowing that I had been taken off of a military installation at the age of 18 with a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain, having 2 children while still having had a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain. What lack of intelligence for that school and school district when you take that in consideration. I have had the common sense to bring that forward and be honest. What level of lack of intelligence, despite whatever degree, would that show regarding that backwoods sort of viewpoint? So, in that hypothetical, additionally to, having been born and raised in New Jersey and my New Jersey flag, because why would anybody pay attention to the common sense factor of that? Those types. And where instead of my biological mother, biological father, and biological sister being as they were, what they could have actually assisted with instead of the needless problems that occurred because of those types. Because if they themselves had paid attention, but since they promoted that wrongly, in comparison, that literally shows you nothing different. than my own childhood. You know, I didn't get first place when it came to sparring and form in an international Taekwondo competition as a 12-year-old green belt after making my way through the circuit to get to that international competition as a green belt. But, you know, those people had their opinions. Well, you know what, when it comes to my scuba diving, I went deeper and I handled business longer. So there's that because of the trench area. Not the Boca scuba dive. That Boca scuba dive, that's that. That's different than the Vandenberg scuba dive, which obviously. And so, you know, that's the facts. So that 3-volume book series. But you know, what is it to actually get the credit for my own work that I earned on my own from others for my work to actually be appreciated correctly in honesty and genuinity? I haven't had that luxury ever. So, you know, I haven't ever been asked what I would prefer at all. Nobody's ever asked me that. Because why would I ever want other people to assume by speaking with those people who don't know me? Why would they ever think they'd know what I would prefer? Because they read a couple of books I authored or my website? Oh, how many updates for my journal blog in the year of 2019 to now didn't they know the details of? And that lets you know why they should have asked me directly in comparison to assuming. And that goes across every aspect of. So, in reference to Brandon, though, he would have known as to what my ex-in-laws were doing. He would have been informed of as to why. And so he had made the attempt to show me a few things, and having remembered that from that day up, that lets you know that I was obviously cognitively aware, capable to drive all that distance from Florida to Steele, Alabama, and then through Tennessee to Arkansas to Texas by myself. So obviously I was capable, and still am. Those types of people, as to their failures to ever acknowledge the truth as they've needed to accept it, are the facts. They've had years, at this point, it's over a decade, that they've had to accept those facts. No matter how much they wish their lies would be truth, you can't wish it that way. The facts are the facts. So in just the time frame of September 2007 through January 2008, there had been over about 600 people that he had shown himself in person, face-to-face, in person, in those Stolen Valor Dress Blues too. For my ex-in-laws and my biological mother, biological father, biological sister, and the abomination of a wedding that they had, as far as that's concerned. So those types of people have had to accept that, whether or not they like it, because there's the pictures. So, you know, obviously, common sense, if you have that, then there's the time frame before, because those dress blues went overseas. We're on the military installation. It was 2006 that was worn. I can make a joke. That's an alarm. It's a red alert for those people to take this seriously and accept the responsibilities for their choices, as well as relinquish anything regarding me and my work, because they didn't ever have a right to it to begin with. Especially if you cause needless problems, you have to accept those responsibilities for your choices, whatever length of time thereof, and connections as well. So, while they may not have put much faith behind the truth, well, if they did, they would have asked me what that would be. You know, with etiquette and respect. Because that's how you do that. You don't assume, you ask. And so sure, I've gone and authored books and done a few things, and there's my journal blog, and my website, www.susanmeling.com. That's not celebratory to me at all. But that would require that courtesy. So in Finding a Silver Lining, I had written about how I had moved to Carrollton and I wanted to make sure I had a distance so that way, because of what happened in San Antonio when my biological mother, biological father, and biological sister moved from Illinois to Texas, because I didn't want to deal with that. I had written about, after explaining that I was over an hour away from them as far as my ex-in-laws, because of being respectful to that, as well as having my own space away from that. So that way it was understood. The only allowance would be if I allowed you to. If you showed up without my permission, however, you don't have the right to be upset when it came to my house or where I live. Doesn't matter. You have to schedule that, unless, you know, in the reference of at Sapphire having volunteered and that knowledge in that capacity, that's different than where I live because of respect and etiquette. And so my biological mother, biological father, and biological sister and or ex-in-laws, if they read Finding a Silver Lining, that was directly at those people for what those people were doing when they moved to San Antonio instead. So that was clarified well before the year of 2019. So if they wished otherwise, no. The irony, my biological father had repeatedly told me to pay attention to detail. What detail would be right there to pay attention to? Literally in black and white. And so while I didn't mind certain things, to a degree, it's still etiquette and respect that I reserve the right for in regards of, at those times, my son, my daughter, and I. However, at this point, for me. So, if those people, meaning my ex-in-laws, had just accepted that Grandpa Nichols warned them, and accepted that their dead relative told them that. Now, the ones that live out in Georgia weren't informed of that in person, face-to-face in person. Susie Marie Nichols Lopez and her 3 children were. They were informed, so was Grandma Nichols. Grandpa Nichols told them, he told them so. But because of the desensitized issues, whether or not they paid attention to how many times Grandpa Nichols told them so. So there was Tony and his second wife and 2 daughters, and they were informed, officially, by their dead relative and Grandpa Nichols. So there realistically is no room or leeway. The only one that has any leeway-ish is Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen and David Osteen, with Sandra Marie Osteen and Ariel Nicole Osteen, if they didn't allow the biases to be a needless problem. If. But that's something they would have had to accept. So, whole bunch of people. By the way, he did that in Fort Worth as well, regarding the dress blues. Grandpa Nichols lost it. If they remember, so in the time frame of having picked up the pictures from JCPenney at Ingram Park Mall and then having gone to Fort Worth that weekend, their dead relative showed them himself in those dress blues. Grandpa Nichols lost it, flew off the handle for that being in his house. If they remember that. Then again, certain other situations. So, however you view that, because when that happened, it was around Christmas time, if I remember, when he decided to do it a second time and walk around Fort Worth in that. So, however you view that, as far as those references are, to take in consideration. So remember, I did not graduate basic training. Should probably keep that in mind. Shouldn't blame me for something I wouldn't know. And again, when you take in consideration the knowledge of having been taken off of a military installation while still having a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain that took 8.5 years to dissipate out of view of the MRI and CAT scans, and having had 2 children in medical hold unit, they would not have normally allowed that to occur. Because back in medical hold unit, before it became warrior transition unit, they had soldiers that were there that had been given the anthrax shot during basic training, that had been there for 3 to 4 years. I had a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain because of a head injury that I had during basic training. Do not pretend anyone ever again when it comes to that. Do not pretend there wasn't biased aspects, because when there were others who didn't graduate basic training, though had other situations that were kept in medical hold unit, and some of them transferred into warrior transition unit, do not pretend any further regarding those details. Because there's no excuse, cause, or reason for me to have been off of that military installation before a minimum of 4, 5, or even 8.5 years because of the subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain. So while, okay, I was, obviously it worked out to a degree-ish, that doesn't change the facts. So I've written in some of my journal blogs, if you have the capability of assisting in regards of, well before my journal blog, by the way, I had asked in reference to emails I sent out from my original email account, susan.meling@gmail.com. However, there's been issues regarding that. So I have my new email as well as my website to contact form and those references. And so I've explained that in my journal blog, The Ornery PSA. So if my biological mother thought that I would contact her after she sent the letter up to Washington State, no. That 4th of July email in 2013. She needs to remember that. Keep that in mind. Because there were only certain ways I was going to be willing to speak with her. After everything I had dealt with. Those were the choices that were made. So I had asked for contact with etiquette and respect if there is something that actually could be helpfully assistive to the situations for betterment. I've made those requests. I've asked. Even in my journal blog, I've asked. I have my to contact form. Etiquette and respect. However, those types of needless problems from the journal blog updates on my website, www.susanmeling.com, that Geek Squad stuff. Maybe, just maybe, if people stayed out of my technology devices and didn't cause me any needless problems and actually assisted me how I actually need it in comparison to their assumptions, maybe, just maybe, stuff would actually be better for me instead. And I wouldn't have to lecture so much. Common sense. Because, that's the only way. Period. So, make sure to like my official YouTube channel videos. Subscribe to my official YouTube channel. Go to my website, www.susanmeling.com. And if you're going to leave a comment, make sure to have etiquette and respect. Today is the 7th of May, 2022. And remember the stuff as far as Brandon is concerned, because obviously he may have made attempts to inform others. As far as my ex-in-laws and my biological mother, biological father, biological sister, and Millers are concerned.